On the topic of reviews, real quick before we close up, people keep asking the Iron Claw, what's the status?
Oh, God, I saw that. And I guess we're going to have to talk about it at some point. Here's a tease. The best thing was they got the Sportatorium ring to look almost exactly like the Sportatorium ring looked. But almost none of the things in that movie were ever said by any of those human beings to any of those other human beings. And none of the people in the movie looked like any of the human beings that were saying those things or weren't saying those things. And they used your time machine to hop back and forth chronologically and mesh together some other fucking items. And it was driving me crazy, and I was screaming at the screen, that's not what happened, or they would not use those words, or they did not say these things to each other. But otherwise than that, it was wonderful.
Is that the review, or are we going to do a real review?
I guess we got it. Well, I didn't take notes. I just actually, Stacy popped it up one night on the streaming.
You saw it from beginning to end?
Yes. No, actually, I started at the end and I watched it backwards. It was easier that way.
Okay, that's hysterical. So
Yeah.
what did you think of the casting? Well, let's just get this out of the way, because this may be all we get from you about this movie.
Well, none of those people look like any of those people.
You didn't think the guy who played Fritz was kind of as good as you can get for Hollywood?
Well, Fritz, I guess, was close as you could get. Kevin was bigger than Carrie physically. I mean, the body. And then also, I guess, if they used real wrestling terminology, then maybe the general viewing populace might not be able to understand it. But Fritz wasn't going to talk that way to his kids. His kids weren't going to talk that way to each other. It was like a bunch of marks discussing wrestling that had never been in a locker room before. And I appreciate they tried to make it seem like a shoot, except when they didn't. But I cannot enjoy a movie, a television show, a documentary. Well, I won't say a documentary I can, but a movie or a television show based on something that I know anything about when they fucking make shit up. That's what kills it for me, because I'm like, no, he wouldn't talk like that. He didn't say that. He didn't look like that. These things didn't happen. They didn't say those things to each other. Whatever the fuck. The dramatic license kills me. I cannot fucking get past it. And then, for good reason, none of the wrestlers in the movies or TV shows about the boys look like the fucking boys. And the reason was because that was the whole idea. Nobody looked like these guys. You had to buy a ticket to see them. But am I wrong in this?
Was the casting of Mike Von Erich the worst?
Oh, boy, howdy.
Or what did you think of the Flair and Harley race? Harley race didn't bother me the way it bothered some other people.
No, the Flair, I think, was the worst, wasn't he? As I'm trying to think, yes, the Flair was pretty much goddamn rotten.
Someone said that it was almost like he was doing an impression of the Flair on Young Rock as opposed to the real Flair.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing, is you've got, I'm sure some of the actors, the actors that were the Von Erich boys, they're not bad actors. Now, like this Flair or whatever, he's just some fucking clown that watched 3 of Flair's interviews on YouTube and is trying to play heel wrestler that he's seen on TV once in a while. But,
they gave him a lot of time for that promo.
That's the thing, is that if you saw the real people do it, and especially if you knew the real people, that's why I don't like any of these dramatic renditions of, the wrestling business, because it's not real. They don't look like it. They don't talk like it. They don't act like it. And a lot of these things didn't really fucking happen.
Now,
and then that just bugs me.
Let's talk about a positive before we get back to more negatives. The Sportatorium, the look of, and again, the Sportatorium has been torn down. It's not there. The look of the building that they presented as the Sportatorium, the Freebirds. What did you think of it? You worked in the real building right around the time of the Prime. or the peak
Yes.
of the company, I guess I should say. What did you think of that?
They got the ring down, and the Sportatorium didn't look bad. Obviously, they couldn't construct a 5,000 seat arena and put 5,000 people in it for extras. I understand that limitation. I think the wrestling scenes were probably the highlight of the movie, both in terms of the way the ring looked, the way they shot it, the way the television looked, and also they were somewhat exciting. The wrestling scenes in the movie. And, but that's the thing is that, they were trying for that detail to get to the wrestling fan. But I think, I just don't see any way that a professional in the business that knew these people and was there for some of the things that happened, it has to drive you crazy. This is not right. It's completely wrong.
Is part of the reason it would drive you crazy because if you know the real story is kind of better than, or you could argue maybe better than the movie version?
Well, yes, and I know, again, time limitations, and they can't put everything in. But they wrote the boys converse and Fritz conversing with the boys conversing with each other like fans would about it's hard to explain, but this would not be the way that the boys were talking about the wrestling business. That's I'd have to get me a copy of the script and I'll translate it into wrestling lingo. That would be fun, actually. Now, how would they say this in the locker room? And then you have a paragraph of regular English spoken by a normal person, then translated into wrestling language. How would you say it in the locker room?
The biggest star in the movie, Zac Efron, playing Kevin Von Erich. He received a lot of praise for his role. How similar or not similar at all was his presentation of Kevin Von Erich from what you remember being around Kevin in 1985?
No, none of these guys were anything like the Von Erich boys. I mean, they did the moves in the matches, and they said some of the the things that they said in promos and in the story, they'll take a line here or there, but none of these guys talked like or acted like any of the Von Erichs in person in real life. And I've never known anybody else that did.
Do you think David was well cast?
I never met David. He's the only one I never met.
Just in terms of look, at least.
Well, no, because nobody looks like these fucking people. And David was like, what, 6'4"?
6'5", maybe?
6'5", maybe. And like I said, the ripped one in this one was Kevin, and Kevin was in great shape, but Kerry was the fucking bodybuilder. And he looked like the little guy there. I'm not trying to pick it apart, but no, because it's people that I knew in a place I was, it's not like that. But it wasn't, they didn't make fun of the wrestling business or knock it or make it like that it's so simple anybody could do it or be disrespectful to it. I'm not saying that. It was just, no.
All right, well, there's the review of the Iron Claw that everyone's been waiting for, and...
Yeah, boy, see, aren't you glad you waited?